This is CBC Here and Now.
Get rid of it.
This seafood sauce plant hasn't operated in decades, but is still causing concerns today.
We just want it cleaned up. Just get the smell and the material that's in it out.
We'll have the latest on that coming up on CBC Investigates.
More setbacks for the troubled Labrador-Island link.
So we may need to beef up the Labrador-Island link in certain targeted areas. It might not be a widespread issue.
These turnbuckles are breaking during freezing rain events, and power lines are dropping to the ground. I'm Terry Roberts. We'll have that story coming up.
All fed up, the neighbors put out a call and staged a big protest down at City Hall.
In the second half of Here and Now, townie troubadour Sean Panting gives us his take on the battle brewing in the Battery. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin tonight with a stinky situation in St. Mary's. It's an update on a CBC Investigates story that we first told you about in 2019. Now, the small community on the Avalon Peninsula has been living with a stench from a long-closed manufacturing facility. People there have concerns about potential health impacts of the decades-old rotting seafood sauce inside. Now, we filed an access to information request nearly 4 years ago to try to find out more, and now we finally have some answers. Here Now's Rob Antle has the details.
A breathtaking view that can take your breath away, quite literally.
We can't even open our windows. It's bad, really bad.
The smell is just unbearable.
People in St. Mary's have complained for years about the odor coming from this deserted plant and the product that's been inside for decades. Concerns about potential health impacts.
We've turned into a disaster zone for the town.
When you say disaster zone, what do you mean?
We don't really know because we don't know what we're dealing with.
There was government support in the 90s for big plans here to make Vietnamese-style seafood sauce for export. But the manufacturing operation stopped about 20 years ago. Capelin left fermenting in more than 100 of these massive vats ever since, the former owner unable to be reached. Perhaps worse than the smell lingering around town are the unanswered questions lingering too. We've uncovered some old testing results that have sparked some new concerns about what's inside the abandoned plant behind me. The Federal Environment Department swooped in 6 years ago after getting reports that effluent was flowing into the ocean. When tested, it killed all fish within 15 minutes, described as acutely lethal. All this is news to the mayor.
An agency actually sat on this and never came to the town to let us know how toxic this really is to fish and the environment. Like, this is not right.
And it's news to the local Liberal MP as well. Ken MacDonald says he raised the situation with top federal Environment Department officials in the past and was told everything was fine.
They had no concerns at all.
MacDonald now plans to go to the current Environment Minister to ask for help.
Because I think somebody fell down on the job and actually left the people of St. Mary's in a tangle that they shouldn't be in today.
We have our ocean here is 50 feet away. If this product gets into the ocean, what can that do?
In a statement, Environment Canada did not say what was done to notify residents of these test results, but stresses that its responsibility was to protect the fish, which it did when the pipe was sealed 6 years ago to stop the waste from entering the bay. It steered questions about health and odor to the province, who confirmed the town did put in a funding request for cleanup, but that request did not meet the necessary criteria. It adds the plant owner is responsible for cleanup. But the company dissolved 17 years ago, and the owner hasn't been heard from in years.
I can't understand why the governments have to be here so often and looking at it and smelling it and not doing nothing. Just up above the hill there's our school kids are up there. If this is toxic, and when we got the word today that it's supposed to be, well, if it's killing fish, what's it doing to the people that's living here, right?
The mayor says it's time for action.
We know what's here now. Let's just go and clean it up. All levels of government, let's work together and get this done, once and for all.
He says that's something the town of just over 300 people can't do on its own. Rob Antle, CBC News, St. Mary's.
Well, meanwhile, Premier Andrew Furey was at an event this afternoon where we asked him whether his government will take action to resolve the situation.
Is the province going to do anything to help these people?
Well, first of all, let me sympathize with the residents who are impacted by the issue. We're certainly willing to sit down with all different levels of government and agencies. As you know, it's not straightforward, it's quite complex, to seek resolution. So we're happy to work with agencies involved, other levels of government involved, and private citizens to resolve the issue for those that it's impacted.
Well, if you're in Corner Brook, you may be facing some delays in your mail delivery. Canada Post issued a service alert for the area yesterday and today due to inclement weather. Now, residents there are encouraged to clear snow and ice from their walkways to make it easier for mail carriers when service resumes. Now, the reason for that is all of this snow on the west coast. We're seeing some snow as you head towards Gander as well through Central, and that's not showing up on the radar, but measured about just over 8 centimeters today, and there's certainly some more on the way. The reason for that, area of low pressure offshore now. We've got a ridge of high pressure to the north, and that is going to bring in some nice weather over the next couple of days for Labrador, but a whole different story for parts of the island. This area of low pressure heading over Ontario and parts of the states at the moment is going to be our weather maker. So Environment Canada has already issued a winter storm watch for the Burin Peninsula and all of the Avalon. It is shaping up what looks to be a pretty significant snowfall event for a good chunk of the Avalon and maybe even parts of eastern Newfoundland. So here's a look quickly at what's going to happen. The area of low pressure is actually going to skirt south of the island. We'll see that snow develop as we head through the overnight, evening and overnight on Friday, and then by Saturday we'll start to get into some of that heavier snow along with some gusty winds. So we'll talk about how much to expect and when to expect it when I come back.
Memorial University's Faculty Association has voted 90% in favor of going on strike.
Get out of their stubbornness and ready to meet us in the middle. We can have a deal in 1 hour.
We'll have reaction from MUNFA, the university, and the students. That story coming up.
Well, the price of gas took a jump at the pumps this morning. A liter of gas is up by just over 7.5 cents. That puts the price of self-serve on the Avalon Peninsula at $1.68 a liter. Diesel is up by about 2 cents. The price of stove heating oil is up by more than 5 cents in Newfoundland, but stove oil is down by about 4 cents in Labrador. The cost of furnace oil and propane dropped slightly. There are more questions tonight about the reliability of the Labrador-Island link. Sections of the high voltage power line on the northern peninsula and in southern Labrador have dropped to the ground in recent weeks. And while hydro officials are still investigating, the spotlight is on a small piece of metal rigging and its ability to hold up during an ice storm. Here now's Terry Roberts reports.
And we have seen a couple of these failures right here on the thread.
This is what's known as a turnbuckle, an adjustable piece of rigging that's used to secure power lines to utility towers. This is what a turnbuckle looks like when it snaps, something that's happened not just once recently, but 3 times during freezing rain events in northern Newfoundland and southern Labrador.
There's a lot that we need to figure out at this stage.
It's yet another setback for what we call the LIL, a nearly $4 billion high-voltage transmission line from Muskrat Falls to the Avalon Peninsula. Hydro and its contractor GE have spent years trying to perfect the software needed to operate the line, with a high-power test in November failing, resulting in temporary power outages affecting thousands of customers. Now, another problem. The lines became thick with ice in recent weeks, something designers knew would happen. In 3 places along the LIL, sections of the line dropped to the ground. In one case, more than 70 kilometers of access road had to be cleared of snow in order to access the site. Line crews are still working to repair the damage, and hydro officials are scratching their heads, trying to figure out why the turnbuckles are failing.
It could be related to weather and ice load. It could be related to design, could be related to a particular small area of poor installation. There's a large list of potential issues.
And a solution could mean more spending on a project that is already billions over budget.
And that plan, may include putting some strengthening components in certain areas. So we may need to beef up the Labrador-Island link in certain targeted areas. It might not be a widespread issue.
But all this is not a threat to power customers. The Holyrood thermal plant is fully operational and will serve as backup for the Lille for years to come. So are we any closer to finishing the Labrador-Island link? Well, the brass here at Hydro tell me to expect another high-power test. That's the final step before full commissioning in either February or March. But after years of missed deadlines, no one's lining up just yet to cut a ribbon. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
And speaking of power, Quebec's premier says talks over Churchill Falls could start in just a few months. Francois Legault says work is underway to come up with a plan B. But the premier of this province says there's no guarantee negotiations will ever happen. Here Now's Peter Cowan is here to break this down for us. So Peter, what is the Quebec premier saying?
Well, 2041 may seem like a long way away when the deal with Quebec expires, but for electricity companies, the risk of losing a good chunk of its power, that means that deadline is coming soon. That's why Quebec is anxious to sit down and negotiate a new deal. Churchill Falls supplies about 15% of Quebec's power. Right now, it's getting a lot of power for a very low rate. And with time running out on that contract, the Premier of Quebec is planning some new dams because without them, Francois Legault is worried that they'll be stuck accepting whatever price Newfoundland and Labrador demands.
I don't want to have no B plan in my pocket and be obliged to accept whatever the tariff Andrew Furey is proposing me. So I think that if we want to be in a good negotiation position with Newfoundland, we need to have a B plan for Churchill Falls. And it means new dam.
The problem is that right now Hydro-Quebec has no plans for new dams, but the Premier is pressuring them to change that. Legault is talking about negotiating in the next few months, but Andrew Furey says that's far from a sure thing. There are two panels advising Newfoundland and Labrador on the best way to move forward. So yes, that could mean negotiating a new deal, but the Premier says there are other options.
There are other potential opportunities that we haven't thought about, haven't contemplated, whether that's in using the hydroelectric capacity for domestic or domestic industrial use or for hydrogen use. There is a different energy space than there was in 1969. So I'm interested to hear their thoughts before proceeding down any specific road.
Now, Quebec is still a logical customer for all of that power, especially when it's so far away from other customers. And the Premier says if they do end up negotiating, they'll be in a much better position this time.
We think that this is an incredible asset. It's one that grows more valuable by the day. And I'm quite comfortable in our starting position should that be the course that we decide to take.
Now, the Premier says he hopes to get a report in the next few weeks that will help him figure out which route to take. Carolyn?
Thanks so much, Peter. That's Here Now's Peter Cowan. Well, the Premier was in Placentia today for a funding announcement to improve the town's drinking water infrastructure. $6.6 million in federal, provincial, and municipal funding was announced to make the town's water system more reliable and efficient. The money will be used to replace more than 5 kilometers of water pipes. The mayor says the funding will help complete work that's been ongoing for years.
The project will ensure all citizens throughout our municipality have safe, clean drinking water supply. The scope of the work will see the removal of asbestos pipes, the installation of 300 new service lines, and the proper location for curb stops, and will be the conclusion of the service lines to Route 100 Dunville. I never thought I'd hear to say that.
Well, a 32-year-old man was arrested in Labrador City yesterday evening on several firearms offenses. The RNC says it received a tip shortly before 7 p.m. that a man was driving in the Tamarack Drive area with a loaded gun. Police officers found the vehicle and brought in a crisis negotiator to resolve the situation. The man was taken peacefully into custody. He was charged with careless use of a firearm, unsafe storage of a firearm, and possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose. And police are investigating after an elementary school in Witless Bay was vandalized late last night. The RCMP says St. Bernard's Elementary was broken into shortly before midnight. More than 30 windows were smashed and fire extinguishers were set off inside the school. Police say a man was spotted running from the building. Students were given the day off today as work began to clean up the damage. The province's English school district says the school will also be closed tomorrow. Now to Memorial University, where 90% of its faculty have voted in favor of a strike. The association that represents them held the vote last night, but it doesn't mean they'll be hitting the picket line right away. The group has given the university until January 30th to come up with a deal. Here and Now's Jeremy Eaton reports.
In a shock to no one, Memorial University's Faculty Association has voted to strike.
Turnout was very high, 93%. And we had a 90% yes vote, 10% no vote, which is like the diamond standard for union votes.
We were actually expecting a strong strike vote because we already knew the feeling of the faculty across the university.
There is still hope to save a semester which has just started. The two sides will head back to the bargaining table on Monday.
None of us know the real outcome of what will happen at the table, but we are really hopeful that we can come to an agreement.
If they're willing to get out of their my way or highway approach, get out of their stubbornness, and ready to meet us in the middle, we can have a deal in 1 hour.
The major roadblocks to a deal are pay. Faculty hasn't gotten a raise in 6 years, and the two-tier system, which Hossein says puts tenured profs and the contracted ones in an us versus them situation.
So they don't have job security. They get their contract renewed on an annual basis. So they are on an 8-month contract. So for example, if they teach from September to May, in the summertime, they don't even have any benefits or anything like this. So they're a very precarious portion of our membership.
The last time faculty went on strike here, 23 years ago, before most of these students were even born. Yet, an impending strike is on their minds.
It is hard, especially when you're doing engineering. You depend a lot on your professors with the courses because most of the things are not taught in school and you don't have back-end knowledge about it.
There's a lot of questions right now, especially for people that are in their first year of university, with not knowing if we're going to have an extended semester, if we're going to just miss the units that we're supposed to be taught, and going forward with that into second and third year university and how that could really affect the way we'll learn in the future because we will miss a chunk of our education really.
At the end of our interview today, Hossein made a plea to the students. He told them that it's okay to be nervous right now, but not to worry. If the faculty does go on strike, they will eventually come back to work. And when they do, they'll do whatever they can to get the students through the semester and on with their academic careers. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, a St. John's filmmaker who died last year is being recognized by the Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television. Paul Pope will receive a posthumous award, the Academy Board of Directors Tribute Award. Pope worked on hundreds of productions in his more than 40-year career in the province's film and television industry. His company, Pope Productions, was behind productions like Life with Derek and Rare Birds. Most recently, he was involved with the Hudson and Rex TV series in St. John's before his death last spring. The Academy of Canadian Cinema and Television says Pope was a giant in the Canadian media community and a huge advocate for the industry in Newfoundland and Labrador. The Canadian Screen Awards will be handed out in April.
A court case about deciding who isn't a member of the Halapu Mi'kmaq First Nation and who is.
I have a 1-year-old son who's not going to be recognized at all as Native, and that's confusing for him, and it will be confusing for him. he has cousins, first cousins that are recognized fully.
Coming up on Here and Now.
I finally felt like I had somewhere to go talk to Dad.
It's been a few weeks since this phone was placed here on the banks of the Humber River in Deer Lake. We'll tell you about why it's here and how it's helping the people of Deer Lake cope with the loss of loved ones. That's coming up.
Well, it's going to start to look a little more winter-like as we head through the weekend. We'll talk about how much snow to expect when I come back.
It's a fight over Indigenous identity in Supreme Court. It centers on the Qalipu Mi'kmaq band. Lawyers are arguing about the process which decided who qualifies to be a member. The court case is playing out to a full house in the St. John's courtroom. Here in Mark Quinn is covering the case and has this report.
Outside the courthouse, there were sacred ceremonies and traditional music. Inside, lawyers are scrutinizing the bylaws of the Federation of Newfoundland Indians and the decisions that were made leading up to the creation of the Qalipu Mi'kmaq First Nation. Every day, courtrooms have been blocked with as many as 50 people hanging on every word. Greg Janes, a veteran who served in Afghanistan, lost the Indian status he was granted under Canada's Indian Act after he applied for Qalipu band membership.
Really a kick in the gut for us, because it doesn't mean monetary gain. It just means that my identity is being brought into question here. And not only for me, but see my son and daughter lose their status, and when they had a interest in their culture, it really upset me, and I promised them that I will get their status back, and that's what I'm doing here today.
Jane says he was denied band membership because he was overseas serving in the Canadian military instead of living in Newfoundland.
That's the reason why, because I couldn't connect to a Mi'kmaq community at that time, and I'm originally from Burjo, which is a Mi'kmaq community.
Witnesses like Jennifer LaRue are being called to testify about the results of their band membership applications.
Myself and my family were all members of the St. George's band, and therefore members of the Federation of Newfoundland Indians, and we had to do a couple of enrollment processes, for which I was originally part of the Halapu newly formed band in 2011, and then in 2013, when they implemented the supplemental agreement, I was then asked to enroll again, and I was then rejected from the band.
LaRue believes her case clearly shows that Halapu band enrollment was deeply flawed.
I have an identical twin sister who submitted the exact same application as I did in 2013, who was accepted, and I was rejected. So the question is why am I less than her? Why is she fully recognized and I am not? Why is my son not entitled to the same benefits as her children? Seems a little bit arbitrary and a little bit unfair.
This trial is questioning the process that was used to decide who is a member of the band and who isn't. Lawyers for the Federation of Newfoundland Indians and Canada are defending that process, and lawyers for the plaintiffs say it should be scrapped. The trial is expected to continue at least into next week. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
This weather forecast has been brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. Whatever you're up for this winter, discover experience packages at winterupnl.ca.
So, Ashley, snow lovers in the east, I'm sure will be excited by your forecast. Snow is finally on the way, right?
Hopefully. We're kind of in the same situation we were in last week, but it's looking likely that we will see a significant winter storm. Let's take a look at what's going on right now, though. Area of low pressure offshore. We still have some windy conditions, though, along coastal areas of Labrador, and then a ridge of high pressure just to the west. That is going to dominate your weather over the next, through the weekend, really, with lots of sunshine in the forecast. More winter-like temperatures as well, which I'm sure is welcome news, because today daytime highs, as they're below zero, but they're nowhere near where you should be sitting this time of year up across Labrador. -5 today in Lab City, -9 in Nain, but otherwise hovering around the 0 degree mark, even above 1 degree in Mary's Harbour this afternoon. Those temperatures across the island as well, hovering somewhere between 0 and about 5 degrees through the day today. Taking a look at the current temperatures, though, into the minus single digits, down to -16 in Lab City with a little bit of a wind chill, feeling more like -25. And then we've got those cooler temperatures across the island as well, cooler than they have been for most of the week, but still seeing those wind chill values, particularly for the eastern half of the island anyway, into the minus single digits, and that will generally continue as we head through the night tonight. So just taking a look at what's going on right now, we can see a number of areas of circulation, which is showing us where our areas of low pressure are, and we're seeing some activity on the west coast as well as far as those flurries are concerned. Zooming in a little bit, you can see it there. Looks like some rain is in the mix as well. Anticipating that this is going to continue as we head through the evening hours tonight, but that wind I was talking about across coastal areas of Labrador between 67 and 96 kilometer per hour top wind gusts so far today. Those winds are still fairly gusty out of the northwest at this point, between 60 and about 80 kilometers per hour. So as we head through the night tonight, those winds will eventually ease. So at the moment, Environment Canada still has that blowing snow advisory from Makovic through to Cartwright, but as those winds ease, we should see the blowing snow advisory ending. Now, overall, the accumulation of snow is pretty much over. You may pick up a couple more centimeters, but where all the action will be along the west coast and then along the northeast coast of the island as well. I know it's been snowing for most of the day today. Picked up about 8 centimeters, like I said a little bit earlier, in Gander, and that will continue as we head through the night tonight. We may even see a few flurries, even across northern portions of the Avalon as well as we get into the morning. Here's your temperatures for tonight, dipping quite chilly, minus 27 in Lab City overnight tonight, otherwise into the minus single digits still towards the coast. Winds will eventually ease, but they'll be out of the northwest between 50 and 70 kilometers per hour. Island temperatures into the 0 to minus 5 degree range, and again, not a whole lot of wind to speak of, but still looking at that light snow. So here's the accumulation. This will take us through to Friday morning. Somewhere between 2 to 5, maybe even pockets of a little bit more, especially towards the coast and higher elevations on the west coast. That will generally continue again as we head into the afternoon tomorrow. We'll probably pick up a couple more centimeters as far as that is concerned. So here's a look at the future tracker. There's that snow I was talking about. Then we turn our attention to the Avalon and the Burin Peninsula. This is where we'll see the snow start into the evening hours tomorrow and then pick up as we get into Saturday morning. Winds won't be overly impressive Friday, but will pick up as we head into the afternoon hours on Saturday, gusting somewhere between 50 and 70 kilometers per hour. So we'll talk about amounts a little later, but it is looking significant. So just before we get there, though, between 0 and about 1 or 2 degrees for a good chunk of eastern Newfoundland tomorrow afternoon. Winds 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Towards central, again, looking at more accumulation, a couple more centimeters expected through the day tomorrow, with your temperatures hovering around the 0 degree mark. Similar forecast towards the west coast, those northeasterlies between 20 and 40. Northern Peninsula looking pretty nice, actually. You may see some flurries, but some peaks of sun as well. Mary's Harbor, you'll hang on to the chance of some flurries, but then that ridge of high pressure dominates tomorrow. Temperatures much more seasonable into the minus teens, but lots of sunshine and lots more where that came from as well through the weekend. I'll get into the long range forecast coming up.
Our family cannot go outside, like just for basic things, like to buy your food and stuff.
Fleeing Afghanistan with his family, an interpreter who helped this country's military is still waiting to come to Canada. An update on a story we brought you earlier this week. We have an update on a story we brought you earlier this week on Here and Now. On Monday, I spoke with Lisa Compton of Paradise, a retired nurse with the Canadian Armed Forces, who's making a public plea to bring an Afghan interpreter and his family to Canada. We're calling that man John to protect his identity. John also volunteered at a hospital where Compton worked. She says he's a trusted friend who even risked his life to save her.
We were together in the airfield, and we were as close as you and I, and basically it would be like the rocket went off across the street over there. And so we hit the ground. He jumped right on top of me.
His instinct was to protect you.
Yep.
Like many Afghans who helped the Canadian military, John now fears for his life. With Compton's help, he's applied to come to Canada as a refugee, but more than a year later, he's still waiting. CBC reporter Rafi Boudjikanian has been looking into this story, and he reached John in Pakistan. Rafi joins us now from Ottawa. So Rafi, what did John tell you in your interview?
Carolyn, in brief, he is very worried. He and his family managed to get out of Afghanistan after its fall to the Taliban, but they have only made it as far as Pakistan, and they only got there in November. By that point, the government of Pakistan was running ads on TV and on social media, basically saying if you're an undocumented migrant, you could be thrown in jail or deported back to the country you came from. Now, John and his family did have visas when they arrived, but that paperwork has since expired. He does not have the money to renew it, and the lack of documents leads to other problems too.
We don't have accommodation, we don't have our medical, no education for our children.
And I should note that we are also not using John's real voice. So Rafi, just how fearful is John for his life and for his family?
He's got a lot of concerns. So there is a Pakistani offshoot of the Taliban. He is worried about them. He also worries he could get arrested by Pakistani police. Have a listen.
Our family cannot go outside, just for basic things, like to buy your food and stuff.
Well, John helped Canadians in Afghanistan, and now he's the one looking for help. How is he feeling about how long it's taking his application for refugee status to be approved?
You know, Carolyn, his file has been marked urgent for a year and hasn't gotten anywhere. He is quite concerned about that. He's reticent to directly criticize the government of Canada, just like many other Afghan military interpreters I've spoken to, because they're depending on the government to get them out of their dangerous situation. But he does say he's done his part, and he expects the Canadian government to now do theirs.
And what is the federal government saying about this situation?
Immigration Canada often will not speak about individual cases, citing security concerns. They have brought some 27,400 Afghans to Canada since Afghanistan's fall to the Taliban, but that's about 12,000 short of their overall goal of 40,000 Afghans. They say they're working on that. They have landed charter flights in Pakistan, several in the last few months of 2022. They're hoping to do more of that soon. But of course, you have to be approved to come to Canada to get on those flights. And it's not clear why John and his family are not there yet.
Okay, so what is next for John and his family? Is he hopeful about the future right now?
He says despite it all, he's optimistic that one day he will get to Paradise, Newfoundland, and he'll get to reunite with his friend Lisa. But of course, he's worried at the same time. And at this point, even the Canadian government is saying that they're looking into reports of arrests in Pakistan. That's despite what they told me in December, that they had received reassurances Islamabad would not be doing that. But clearly something has changed since then.
Well, Rafi Boudjikanian, thank you so much for this.
You're very welcome.
Now to the West Coast, the town of Deer Lake has a public phone that's been getting regular use this winter. The old rotary phone was set up in late 2022, but it's not connected. It's a wind phone, a concept that was developed in Japan as a way for people to grieve the loss of loved ones. Here Now's Troy Turner explains.
It's nestled among the fir, spruce, and birch. overlooking the Humber River, connected to the air alone. There's no speed dial on this phone, no technology, no screen, but it's found a place for those looking to grieve.
My initial reaction at first was, I thought I was going to cry. I just felt it was such an awesome idea.
Natasha Levers lost her father to suicide 5 years ago. He was an avid outdoorsman and worked in wildlife and conservation. Before his death, he requested no gravesite or funeral even.
Most people have a place to go and talk to their loved one. Well, I always felt like I had nowhere until the concept of the wind phone was introduced, and then I finally felt like I had somewhere to go talk to Dad.
It's a short walk into one of the many nature trails throughout the town of Deer Lake, among the cover of towering trees, near brooks and rippling streams, through the well-worn trails and away from noisy traffic.
It's just the opportunity to be able just to disconnect from everybody and have your moment in the woods and just close your eyes and listen to the wind. Just feel the wind on your face, listen to the branches blowing and the trees and the leaves just rustling.
When the town's Health and Wellness Committee contemplated location, the trail system was an easy choice, and their small investment is reaping a big reward.
It's been awesome. Really wonderful response. I mean, a lot of people are sharing their own personal stories about how it kind of, it helps them move through their own grieving. It's providing people a lot of comfort, helping them to kind of reconnect with their loved ones and with their past. And, through the town, we're just so happy to be able to support people through that process.
For Lavers, there's no more perfect escape. To listen to the wind, to connect with her father, to feel the peace nature has always brought her.
Hey Dad, haven't spoke to you since Christmas. Just want to know how you're doing. I just want to let you know that we took down our Christmas tree. I was so lucky to have a Christmas tree from the farm this year. Just imagine, Dad, I had one of your Christmas trees in my living room. How special was that? Oh, I just miss you so much. I wish you were here with me still. I love you so much, Dad. Things are great. I just couldn't ask for better. No complaints or anything. Mom and Chandelier and Danielle are all doing well. I love you. I always will. I know you're with me. I miss you. I love you. Take care. I'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Troy Turner, CBC News, Deer Lake.
Call it away, won't turn off his lights, turn off his lights, turn off his lights. They're all up on stun, yes, it's painfully bright.
Like only he can, Sean Panting offers his musical take on the bright light fight that's been brewing in the Outer Battery. His performance just ahead. Well, those blinding lights in the Outer Battery have become the talk of the town in St. John's. Local residents are up in arms. Council says there's nothing to be done, and the man at the center of it all, Colin Way, isn't talking. Way did, however, install yet another controversial floodlight on one of his buildings in the Battery. Our colleagues at the St. John's Morning Show turned to Townie troubadour Sean Panting for his take on it all. Here it is.
Since long about May month, we've heard the pleas of residents down in the Outer Battery. There ain't no dark in the dark of the night, 'cause Colin Way won't turn off his lights, turn off his lights, turn off his lights. They're all up on stun, yes, it's painfully bright. The neighbors complained in hopes that he might show some mercy and turn off them lights. Oh, woe to the neighbors whose properties face a shed lit so bright you could see it from space. He keeps doubling down, no, he don't seem contrite. In fact, he keeps on putting up lights. He put up more lights, that don't seem right. What kind of response is he trying to incite? Up in the ante, it seems impolite. No, he ain't planning to turn off his lights. All fed up, the neighbors put out a call and staged a big protest down at City Hall. While all expressed sadness for them in their plight, there was no plan made to turn off the lights. John Abbott, he showed up and looked pretty vexed, but Breen pointed out that the issue's complex. The St. John's Act needs a total rewrite, so it's not his job to turn off the lights, turn off the lights, turn off the lights. Now we're embroiled in political fights. The whole situation seemed black and white. Now we don't know how to turn off them lights. When council decided no action was best, the general consensus was WTF. From residents left to continue their fight, to have their neighbors turn off his lights. There's no stop to the hoopla, there's nothing been solved, despite chainsaw use and the cops being called. It all came to nothing, you know that ain't right. Ain't no one prepared to turn off the lights. Oh, turn off the lights, turn off the lights. It keeps escalating with no end in sight. For swift resolution, the chances are slight. Ain't no one gonna turn off them lights.
Well, in a surprise announcement, New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says she's stepping down next month. An emotional Ardern says her 6 years in office have taken a toll.
And so today I'm announcing that I will not be seeking re-election.
Elected at the age of 37, she was the country's youngest leader in more than a century, but says she no longer has enough in the tank to lead the country. During her tenure, she's best known for skilled crisis management, including cracking down on assault-style weapons after shootings at 2 mosques in Christchurch. Ardern also won praise for her leadership during the early days of the global pandemic. She gave birth during her first year in office and made headlines when she took her baby to a UN peace summit. World leaders are sending out tributes and praise today, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Hollywood star Alec Baldwin is going to be charged with involuntary manslaughter in connection with a fatal shooting on the set of his movie Rust. That announcement came in a release from the district attorney in Santa Fe, New Mexico today.
So my understanding, you were in the room when the lady, when someone was
holding the gun, yeah.
Okay, alrighty.
What do you need?
Well, it happened in October 2021. A gun that Baldwin was using discharged during a rehearsal. The shot wounded the film's director, Joel Souza, and killed cinematographer Helena Hutchins. She died in hospital. A weapons specialist has also been charged. Because the incident involved a firearm, the maximum sentence could be up to 5 years in jail and a $5,000 fine. Baldwin was the star and co-producer of the film. Okay, so for folks looking ahead to the weekend, trying to make some plans, what's the timeline for this winter storm that's on the way?
Well, it looks like things are going to start to, start late Friday into Saturday at this point. And it looks like it's a good day to stay home. Let's take a look at what's going on. As far as this model is concerned, looks like the snow will start in the evening hours and then get heavier as we head towards the morning and then continue through a good chunk of the afternoon. In fact, some of the heaviest snow looks to fall through the afternoon. This is also when it will be combined with some pretty gusty winds. So at this point, models pointing at between 50 to 70, maybe even 80 kilometer per hour winds. So you combine that with some of that snow, we'll definitely see some blowing snow. But just the track of the system is what we need to pay attention to. It's very similar to what happened last week, where even just a little shift will change that snowfall. But most of the snow, at least the heaviest snow, should fall for the Avalon, less as you head towards central. In fact, probably less than 5 centimeters in some cases. But this is going to stick around through the evening hours on Saturday and then eventually taper off as we get into Sunday. So here's your temperatures through the day, hovering around the 0 degree mark, maybe a degree or two below, and then plenty of sunshine up across the big land. And that's because we're sitting under that ridge of high pressure. So minus 16 through the day on Saturday for Lab City, and hovering into the minus single digits as you head towards southeastern portions of the big land. Here's the snowfall amounts. This is an early forecast, but a good idea of what's going to happen. So there's that drop off dramatically as you head towards central. But we'll start talking about the 5 to 15 centimeter range for areas like Terra Nova, parts of Clarenville, Burin Peninsula. And then that's when we get into some of the bigger snow. So 15 to 25, maybe even 25 to 35 centimeters, not out of the question. And I have that plus there because some models are pointing at more than that. So we're definitely going to keep an eye on this one, and this forecast may change again, depending. We still have about a day to iron out the snowfall amounts, but this is a good indication, early indication, I should say, of what's going to fall this weekend. So yes, it's not going to be nice, certainly on Saturday afternoon. As we head through the day on Saturday evening into Sunday, ridge of high pressure dominates. Things will clear out. In fact, looking at a beautiful day. So whatever does fall, you'll definitely have some nice weather to enjoy it. -2 in St. John's, temperatures into the minus single digits pretty much across the rest of the island. Here's the long range forecast, going up above 0 again by Tuesday. So some of it may actually melt. And then as far as central and western Newfoundland is considered, we're looking at those temperatures climbing as well. So don't be surprised to see some rain in the long range forecast. Eastern Labrador, snow by the time we get into Tuesday. And then for western Labrador, you're looking at your temperatures dipping again as we get into the middle of next week. Take a look at this great shot. I love this one. Very dramatic.
It is.
But the sun came out and it led to some this very dramatic scene there. This was in Torres Cove. Thank you to Terry for that great shot. If you have any weather photos, send them to Facebook, Twitter, or email to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Dramatic and ominous.
Beautiful.
Very nice, Terry.
Love it. Love those clouds.
Well, that's it for us on this Thursday evening. Thank you so much for spending part of your night with us. Hope you can join us again tomorrow.
Good night.